So for all of you who wish and hope and pray that America will turn back to God, well, today I want to offer a way that can happen. But you may not like it. I better warn you. Let's talk about on this week's episode of Journey at Home. Let me start today by taking you back to 112 AD when Emperor Trajan ruled the powerful Roman Empire. So the empire had experienced a series of setbacks, which clearly meant to them that the gods were not very happy with them. And Emperor Trajan, well, he needed somebody to blame. So who better to pin all the problems on than these Christians throughout the empire who refused to worship all the Roman gods? So Trajan issues an order to all the governors that they're to arrest and they're to imprison any Christians in their communities. And that actually prompts a letter to Trajan from his relative, Pliny the Younger, who was governor of modern-day Turkey. Now, Pliny was confused because there were no orders on what crimes to charge these Christians with or how much Christians could be tortured. So he has some arrested. He interrogates them to find out what trouble they're causing. And unfortunately, that is not much help for him. So he writes the emperor and he asks for direction and clarification, and he includes in his report what he has discovered. And I want to read you just a little bit of it. He writes this. He says, "The sum and substance of their fault or error had been that they were accustomed to meet on a fixed day before dawn and sing responsively a hymn to Christ as to a God." Wait a minute, there's no scheming to overthrow the government? There's no planning to take back the White House? No, he says, they're not trying to change the system. They're not trying to replace the emperor. No. He says, I found no scheming, just singing. And then he goes on to write, "And to bind themselves by oath, not to some crime, but not to commit fraud, not to commit theft, not to commit adultery. They bind themselves to oath not to falsify their trust, nor to refuse to return a trust when called upon to do so." Just sounds like a dangerous bunch, doesn't it? Pliny's going, I thought they were a problem, but I've discovered they're just weird. You know, everybody in the empire lies and cheats and commits adultery. But these Christians are living by a totally different set of values. They seem to be the best citizens in my province. But the emperor, well, he was convinced that they ought to be arrested. So Pliny was convinced he must be missing something. And so what Pliny did was he upped his interrogation tactics. And he tells the emperor, he says, "I judged it all the more necessary to find out what the truth was by torturing 2 female slaves who were called deaconesses. But I discovered nothing else but depraved, excessive superstition." Boy, what superstition are you talking about? Whoa. They believe a dead man walked out of a tomb under his own power and that he was God in a body. I know it's so weird. That's the superstition. He goes on to write, "I've never participated in trials of Christians. I therefore do not know what offenses it is, the practice to punish or to investigate, and to what extent." In other words, he goes, I'm just not sure what I'm supposed to be looking for. I can't find anything in these Christians that deserves punishment, much less execution. See, apparently these Jesus followers were, I know this is hard to understand, they were actually following Jesus, and their conduct was winning the respect of non-Jesus followers. So Pliny wraps up his letter this way. He says, "I therefore postpone the investigation and hasten to consult you, Emperor, for the matter seemed to me to warrant consulting you, especially because of the number of Christians involved. For many persons of every age, every rank, and also both sexes are and will be endangered." Talking about the emperor's orders. He says, goes on to say, "For the contagion of this superstition has spread not only to the cities, but also to the villages and the farms." So from the point of view of this Roman governor, Christianity was contagious. The movement was growing fast, but it was not appealing because of their political stance. It wasn't even appealing because of their theological views. They caught the attention of the pagan Romans because of their character, their morality, their work ethic, their kindness, their compassion, because they loved people the way Jesus had loved them. No one in the first century, in the second century, in the third century hated Christians for their behavior. They only hated them for their allegiance to Jesus, who they claimed rose from the dead. Now just imagine with me for a minute, If that were how people in America viewed us today, imagine what would happen if we demonstrated what it looks like to love one another unconditionally in a bite and devour one another culture. But that's exactly what Jesus has called us to do. So today is the second and the final episode of our short little series, Choosing Sides, the best thing Christians can do for the red, white, and blue. And if you missed the last episode, I hope you'll go back and you'll watch it or you'll listen to it, because according to Jesus, the greatest enemy of the church, it's not the Republican Party, it's not the Democratic Party. The greatest enemy of the church is our division and our disunity as Christians. But that's what we're known for today, isn't it? And that's the reality of who we are in America, because we have chosen to make our political views more important than a you. We have chosen to elevate our policies and our positions over people. And because of that, well, there is no notable or noticeable difference between Republican Jesus followers and Republican non-Jesus followers. There's no notable difference between Democratic Jesus followers and Democratic non-Jesus followers. We have made the fatal mistake of aligning our faith with our politics instead of letting our faith shape our politics. But Jesus' intent was never for us to use politics to further his agenda or to advance his kingdom. It was to shine like a light in a hopeless and dark world through the way we lived and the way that we loved. Here's how he described it. Jesus said, you, talking about all of us followers, you are the light of the world. Implication, the world is dark. You know, the world's trying to figure out a better way to live, but they can't find it on their own. So Jesus says, I have put you here not to judge people who are lost, but to show people how to live. He goes on to say a town or city built on a hill cannot be hidden, and neither do people light a lamp. They don't put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand. It gives light to everyone in the house. And then he says this, in the same way, I want you to let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Now, this is what these early followers of Jesus in Turkey, it's what they did. They just let their light shine. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we should follow their example. Maybe we should gather every week and we should recommit ourselves to following our Savior and to loving one another. Maybe we should be people who live in such a way that outsiders can't help but respect us. Maybe we should be known for loving people more than we're known for our political positions. Because after all, our King said we're to let our light shine. Our King said we're to live a life of such good deeds that people see it and they're drawn to our God. Listen, you can't hide unconditional love. You can't hide people who take an oath each week to be honest and moral and loving and kind and selfless. But you know what hides a light? Arguing, grumbling with our neighbors, criticizing, demonizing people on social media, some of whom we have never even met, we don't even know, fighting with one another over mask or no mask, vaccine or no vaccine, conspiracy theories galore, canceling individuals, canceling entire groups of people because they were wrong about one thing, they said something we disagreed with. People who follow Jesus, people who claim to believe he loves us, he's with us, he's for us, he's a hope of the world. Too often we act like none of that is true. We act like our only hope is for our political party to get power or stay in power. And then we wonder why people who don't follow Jesus, especially the younger generations, we wonder why they write us off and they don't want anything to do with us. Come on. Who can blame them for not wanting any part of our hypocrisy? Our reactions, so think about this, our reactions when things don't go our way, they are far more telling signs of what we really value than any of our rhetoric is. And our reactions as Christians, over the last couple of years, they haven't looked much like Jesus, have they? We have put our light under a bowl, and we hid it at the very time when people desperately needed it. So if we want a different reputation, if we want a better America, maybe we should be better people. Maybe we should follow Jesus' instructions for a change. Maybe we should focus on letting our light shine. I know it's not always easy. From time to time, listen, I am encouraged, I'm enticed. Sometimes I'm baited by people on social media to share my position, to share my views on certain issues that I personally don't consider central to the message of Jesus. Instead of making some point on social media, what I always try to do is invite them instead to sit down with me for a conversation where we can talk about it. Because after all, my responsibility is not to be known for my positions on things. I'd rather be known for loving people like Jesus has loved me. But sharing my views on social media doesn't really help me do that. It just draws a line in the sand that communicates to people, okay, here's where I stand, and now you're either in or you're out with me. So I just try to refrain from talking about complex and nuanced issues in sound bites, I'm trying, I'm not perfect at it, but I want to live a life where people are more valuable than my views. At the same time, I realize it frustrates people sometimes that I don't wade into all these debates, that I don't state what I believe on every issue. Maybe it frustrates some of you. You think, well, why won't he just say what he believes? Why won't he take a stand? Well, let me remind you something. They're not just asking for my views. They're also asking for our views as a church, as a movement. And they make an assumption that's not true. They assume my views represent your views, which you're going, well, I don't have a problem with that. No, of course you don't, unless my view isn't your view and my stand isn't your stand. And at that point, let's be honest, you'd prefer I keep my mouth shut, wouldn't you? You prefer I just let my light shine with my good deeds. And you're right, you are. Because if I become known for my positions on issues that aren't central to following Jesus, you know what it does? It hurts my ability and it hurts our ability as a church to fulfill our mission. When I take a position on non-central issues, what I would be doing is unnecessarily alienating half of our community who view the issue differently. So why would I do that? Why would you do that? Aren't the souls and the relationships of those people more important than your view? You see, anytime you filter your faith through your politics and you become known for your political positions, well, you just alienated half the people in our community who need Jesus but don't agree with your position. Anytime we burn bridges that are necessary to introduce people to Jesus, we just made politics our king and we made God our servant. We're not actually following Jesus. We're not focused on what matters most. Jesus came to seek and save those who are lost relationally from God. Last time I checked, that's what we're supposed to be about. James, the brother of Jesus, said we shouldn't make it difficult for people to turn to God. Guess what? That includes people on the other side of the aisle. That includes Republicans. That includes Democrats. What if we stayed focused on making it easy for them to connect with God? You want to make America better? Well, okay, this is how you do it. You follow the instruction of Jesus, the example of these early followers of Jesus. You show Americans God's love. Let's be model citizens. Let's be model employers and employees. Let's be faithful men and women. Let's not be part of this bite and devour one another culture that we've got going on here. As Christians, let's choose a different side. Let's choose a better side than either Republicans or Democrats can provide. Let's choose to be a church that shows people what a love one another and love your enemy kind of culture looks like. Let's choose unity as our top priority. And let's let our light shine so people see our good deeds and they glorify our Father in heaven. After all, that is the best thing you can do for the red, white, and blue.